Welcome, everybody, to the City of Farmers Branch study session for Tuesday, March 18th. I do not have anybody that is signed up to speak to any of the study session items, so we'll just move on with item C1, which is to review and discuss consent and regular agenda items. Councilman Roan?
Nothing from me.
Councilman Bennett?
Nothing.
Councilman Reed?
Yes, I have some questions regarding items J3 to J7 on the consent agenda.
Those are all mine. Perla Tavera, Director of Economic Development, Tourism, and Planning.
Hi, Perla. Question I had, I know we've had some conversations recently regarding Builders of Hope and Demo Rebuild and what the costs are and expenses to the city. So I was wondering if you could provide for the various demo rebuilds that we have on today's consent agenda, if you could provide us with what the city's expense or liability would be for each of those items?
Absolutely. So I can go with the list based on the resolution number, and I can give you the long-term liability. I do want to say a caveat. This is based on current property tax and the assessed value approved. So if that assessed value goes up, that's going to increase. So
Right.
just wanted to give that caveat, okay? So 056 Tamarix is about $43,044 would be our long-term liability. Resolution 57 Pebble is $28,534. Resolution 46 Mountain View, $41,414. 53 the Cameo is $20,925. 54 Dorado is $32,338, and the last one, 55 Coral, is $32,338.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Very good, thank you. Councilman Jackson?
No questions at this time, Mayor.
Very good. Councilman Neal?
Nothing, thank you.
All righty, moving on. Next up is item C2, which is to receive an update from DART.
Well, Mayor Lynn and City Manager Williamson, members of the City Council, thank you very much for allowing Nadine, our CEO, and myself, the Chairman, to be here today to speak with you and give you an update on a lot of things that are happening. So let me first of all say, my slides are out of date because things are happening so quickly. We sent those over here before our RTC meeting the other day, and the work that we've been doing over the past couple of days, but I'll speak to all that if that's all right. So we've been going through a process of trying to resolve DART's expenditures versus desires of the region and what we do to provide service that is adequate for all the cities. And so myself, Mark Koenig, and Nadine Lee, then whoever board member is for the cities, have met on 3 occasions with each of the cities to talk through a list of things. First of all, what is your expectation from DART on a go-forward basis relative to the legislation that has been put before us? And then, what services would you feel comfortable with and think would be make an advantage to your communities? And so we've had those discussions, and I did a tour with Mayor Lynn of what you have going on in Farmers Branch and some of the plans you have underway. Nadine has done the same with the city manager to just get a feel for a lot of different elements of the community. And so I think that's important. It's been ongoing, and we've come up with some pretty interesting thoughts that we'd like to share with you today. But I will also say that we have been working with the Regional Transportation Council, which started off as, should the RTC support the legislation that is out there, or should it oppose the legislation? And the RTC has remained neutral on both of those. And so Michael
speak-
Morris and,
Speaking of the legislation working through Austin?
yes, yes.
Okay, just for
Yeah,
that.
I'm sorry. I didn't get into enough detail for each of you to know, but we do have a bill that is proposed primarily by the 6 cities that signed a resolution, and you folks did sign that resolution last summer, to remove 1/4 cent from our sales tax collection. We collect a penny, and 1/4 cent would go into a transportation fund that that would serve each of the cities. So that's the legislation I'm talking about, and DART has taken a vote to oppose that legislation, and we're actively working on that. And we were hopeful that the RTC would take that same position. They didn't by a vote of 16 to 17, so we're still working on it. But the good thing is, Judge Jenkins, who is the chair of the Regional Transportation Council, and Michael Morris, who's the executive director of the RTC, Regional Transportation Council, have come up with a way that we handle this, which is through negotiations, internal negotiations with the city. The idea is if we can solve this locally instead of having it go to Austin, that would be a good thing for all of us. And so what we did is there's a small group of mayors and a small group from the city, or from DART, who are working with Michael Morris and the judge. And we had our first meeting last Friday to sort of set the ground rules for how we're going to work. And then we have meetings scheduled for Monday, Tuesday, and Friday of next week to start working through this. And our goal is to see if we can come up with some solutions. The DART board has proposed another solution that is sort of a local approach to resolving some of the issues that we've heard. And we will work on, I've handed that out at the Regional Transportation Council last Thursday. And Mayor, I don't know if you received a copy of that or not. Probably, I think you were there, so you probably have some idea of what that's all about. But we are going to work on Friday as a board just to see if we can refine that and take inputs on what we've heard back from the community and that sort of thing. So we're taking this seriously. I think there are a lot of things we can do to with each of our member cities that are valuable to the cities and great for the region and improve economic development. And what I personally, and Nadine might reflect the same thing, the thing that bothers me about removing 25% from our sales tax effectively is removing half of our sales tax or a little more in that to run operations, and that right off the top, we have to pay the debt on make the payment on the debt that we have for building we built quite a system, and it's taken a lot of money to do that. And in 2020, in 2000, we had a vote of the public to allow us to go out for long-term debt, which we did. And that was before I was on the board or Nadine was the CEO. But those things have happened, and we're moving along. So if you remove 1/4 cent from the amount of money we get, we actually then only end up with about 1/2 cent to run the operation. That's the same amount that DCTA and not the same amount, the same proportion that DCTA and Fort Worth Transportation Authority have to spend. And so they struggle all the time with the dollars they have, and they have a much smaller system. The DCTA has the one line that runs, and then Trinity Metro and Fort Worth have 2 lines. They split the cost of the TRE with DART, and then they have their line, which is TexRail, that runs to DFW Airport. So it gets to be very difficult for us to run an organization should that happen. So we're clearly motivated to resolve the problem locally. There's also another problem that we picked up while talking to cities, and that was one of governance. And you folks have that same question. You put a lot of money into DART, and you don't have a representative that's a direct representative, and that is something that we've spent a lot of time trying to work through as well. Now, Senator Parker has also put a bill in place to resolve that problem. And basically what it does is it takes away a lot of votes from the city of Dallas, which is also intended to address the second part of this, is that there is an impression across the member cities that Dallas could run the whole organization by that they have 8 votes, the suburbs have 7 votes on the board. And so they could decide what services could or could not play into the services of DART. Now, I've been on the board for a number of years, and I've not seen that happen, but it could. And so there's a perception that is out there. And so those are the 2 things that Senator Parker's bill is trying to address. How do you level the playing field, and how does everybody get a voice at the table? And so that legislation was just put in place a little over a week ago, and we'll see how that plays out. Our major concern is the first one, which removes 0.25%. And so that's basically where we are right now. The governance thing we'll give our input on, but basically that's got to work through the system, and it's kind of the call of the cities as much as anything. So I'm going to not go into governance because we have a bill that handles that. And I want Nadine to come up and talk about the discussions we've had with Farmers Branch and some of the things that we think are in the future possibilities.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having us today, and I'm really delighted to have an opportunity to brief you on some of the conversations we've had with Mayor Lynn as well as City Manager Williamson on items specific to the City of Farmers Branch that I think are of very important interest for the future of the development of your community. First of all, actually, I'm going to skip around a little bit. I want to talk first about the opportunities to do transit-oriented development in Farmers Branch around the DART light rail station. The city has spent a lot of time and probably a lot of money, I guess, land banking in that area. And we recently were having a discussion with Mr. Williamson and Mayor Lynn about the possibility of including the DART station parking in that whole land assembly to see if we could make that land much more attractive for developers. And so we are interested in doing that. So we're going to proceed with the city staff to see how we can leverage the DART land, the DART parking, so that we could make a much more attractive development for the area. Going along with that, there's been a lot of discussion, mostly led by the City of Irving, to figure out how DART could automatically participate in tax increment reinvestment zones, or TIRZs. The concept would be then to take our sales tax increment from redevelopment or new development and contribute that as potential incentives to bring in new development to the area. And so our leaders within DART, in working with a city manager, sort of a subgroup of the city managers, are working on the various parameters that would allow for DART to automatically participate in those types of arrangements. So let me just give you a pretend example. So if we were to say that we would automatically participate up to 50% of our sales tax increment, then if Mr. Williamson came to me and said, hey, would you guys be willing to contribute 25% of your sales tax increment in this area around the Farmers Branch station, I would have the authority to automatically say yes. If for some reason he came and said, you know, we'd really like for you to contribute 75% of your sales tax increment, then I would say, well, I got to take that to the board. So there are ways that we could automatically participate. So we're trying to develop parameters that would actually be something amenable to DART so that we could automatically say yes. And then have a provision in there that anything above and beyond that we would take to the board. But the idea is speed to market, to try to be able to say yes up front on terms that we know we can agree to. and then be able to contribute in a way to the financing of your new developments so that we can move forward as quickly as possible. And we know that these deals, you know, they're very urgent a lot of times. And so if we can have something in place where you can count on certain types of parameters, then I hope that that will make things easier for the city as far as the new developments are concerned. In addition to that, we have our public transportation improvement funds that we are giving to all of the cities to do transportation or complementary transportation improvements within your city. Farmers Branch received $5.9 million. About 50% of that has been expended to date, or at least allocated to date. And so we are going to continue to work with Farmers Branch as well as all the cities to make sure we draw those funds down as quickly as possible. And then we also have talked with the city staff about shared parking, using the Farmers Branch Station parking for overflow parking and other parking needs that you all have in the new development that you have around the station. And of course, we're happy to do that. Our parking, as you all know, is underutilized. And so we've been doing agreements with all of our cities, or a number of our cities, to make sure that where we have excess capacity on the parking side, you all will have the ability to use that parking on a perpetual basis. So our idea there is to just make sure that we have this perpetual license agreement, which really just sets some rules around notifications and just making sure that we're not disrupting the transit operation, but to allow the parking uses so that you have that capacity. And we're happy to do that for you. And then the last thing I just want to point out is that we worked with the city staff and the staff at Envision Dallas. We understood from the mayor and Mr. Williamson that there was a concern for safety of the patrons and employees of Envision Dallas. And so we worked to create a temporary detour on Route 227 to make sure that we could address the issues of the visually impaired clients trying to cross the street to access the bus services. And so we'll continue to work with the city to optimize the solutions there. Sometimes the situations that we're trying to deal with are not ideal if you have a pretty big arterial that somebody's trying to cross, but we're happy to work with you to try to make things easy and safe for the people who are working at Envision Dallas. And so that's all I have, and I'll turn things back over to Chair Slagle. Thank you.
I'll just sort of summarize, close this out, and then Nadine can stay here with me if you have any questions. And so our goal is, on a move forward basis, is to complete our resolution that I was talking about at the beginning of the meeting. And the board we have a meeting on Friday to work toward that. This will be a straw man for our negotiation with the cities through the RTC. So we will work on that, and then we will have a city council, we'll have a board meeting on next Tuesday. And, if we can, our goal is to sort of pass something that the city representatives on the dartboard believe would be reasonable. And we'll see where that goes. But I'm optimistic that we can reach an agreement. And if we can settle this at home as opposed to in Austin, that would be good. And so we'll try to do that. We have received several resolutions from cities in support of DART's voter-approved funding that we're operating on now because of the negatives that can be caused if we have to take a reduction. If you felt inclined to help us with that, that would be fantastic. If you want to stay where you are, I understand that as well. But we're doing everything we can to try to bring people together and organizations together. So I will close with that. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. Thank you, Gary. I'm going to let council ask their questions first. Councilman Roman?
I don't have any questions, but more so of a comment that I hope that in the future you guys find it appropriate to collaborate with the entire city council regarding any initiatives regarding the city, because you've done work in my district without my knowledge or involvement.
Okay.
Councilman Reed?
No questions yet.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you for coming out and presenting to us today. It's a big conversation in our city. I've heard a lot about financial concerns and agreements and such, but what I've not heard about is improvements in public safety and station area cleanliness.
Okay.
My primary concern is crime, trash, and vagrancy, as you probably know. And there were issues with that over the past year or so. I know you guys had hired more staff and officers and were paying more attention, but I'd really like to hear an update on what you've done. And I'd ask Chief McCoy to come up and sort of help me understand recent times, what's reasonable if you can, what kind of issues that we continue to deal with in our station area.
Nadine, you might want to give us an update on what we're doing and have done.
Yes, so we are in our second year of having a contract to add 100 transit security officers on our system, not just light rail, but certainly focused on our light rail. In addition to that, we've actually incorporated into our budget the dollars that we need to continue operating our clean teams, which was started as a pilot over a year ago. And we actually decided that it was such an effective program to keep the trains clean in service that we decided we would go ahead and incorporate that into our budget for this year. In addition to that, we have ambassadors and elevator attendants who are on the system at various stations to make sure people don't take up residence in our elevators. I know that's not the case here in Farmers Branch because you don't have an elevator, but certainly where we had elevators, that was a concern. So we're continuing to monitor the amount of the number of issues that we have at each of the locations. I will tell you that according to our statistics, and I'll be happy to send these to you after this meeting, but our statistics in Farmers Branch actually are much lower in terms of incidents than any other locations on our system. And so we're very, very happy with what has happened. I understand perception, but we looked at our statistics, and when we know that there's an area that has a lot of issues, we do deploy our officers to those locations. In addition to that, we have our multidisciplinary response teams that we're also continuing, which is trying to intercept people who are in cognitive crisis that are on our system to try to find ways to help them find services so that they're not, causing issues on our system, because obviously people who are in cognitive crisis need services. And so the plan there is, what we try to do is to intercept those folks, develop relationships with them, because usually folks who are in cognitive crisis, they're not going to accept services the first time you discuss anything with them. So we come back time after time. We do see people who we recognize, and so we try to develop a relationship with them so that we develop that trust, and then they're willing to accept services. And so we've had a few examples of successes there. I'd be happy to get you more information on what we're doing.
Okay. Probably Farmers Branch's statistics are much better than other cities because we do have a pretty incredible police department.
Absolutely.
And I know there's a lot of attention paid to in that area. And so I'd ask if Chief McCoy could come up and just, if he's got some insights to share with activities in that area.
That's great. Let me just say, from a board perspective, our priorities have been cleanliness, security, and on-time performance. And so for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been moving steadily, improving steadily with our scores that we get from passengers, our customers, and on our police reports. So, we're making progress. We'd like to do it more quickly, I'm sure, but it is something where we've done, and Nadine and her team have done a great job on trying to make improvements. But I'm anxious to hear from the chief.
Kevin McCoy, Chief of Police. I've been working with Chief Cato over the past year to kind of help address some of the issues. Some of the misnomer, and I've had this conversation with Chief Cato about their statistics, is calls for service 911 wise don't go to DART. They don't have a public safety access point. They're not a 911 system. So when a 911 call comes in, it comes to us. And so frequently data that they have, and I've seen their stats, I've sat through their presentation as we went through this, and I expressed this concern to Chief Cato at the time, is the numbers that they have are reflective of calls that made it to DART. Most of the calls that we get related to the DART station are not coming through DART, they're coming through our 911 system, through Intech, because the person creating the issue the trespassing issue, the theft issue that frequently happens at Cox Farms or one of the other restaurants in the area are being called in by those businesses to our 911 center. Our officers respond, and as a default, typically respond to the dark station because they know that's where the person is likely headed. And so, again, I've discussed this with Chief Cato. They have increased their presence at the dark station significantly over the past year, specifically over the last 6 months. I know they're working much harder to try to address the issues, but it still continues to be an ongoing issue for us. I mean, it's a fairly frequent, I won't go so far to say daily, but it's a weekly issue that we're dealing with. People coming off the train, committing a trespassing issue, a theft offense tends to be the most frequent one. We've had some burglary issues recently where they've come off, burglarized into empty apartments over in the apartment complex and then gone back to the train. So it's still an ongoing challenge for us as we deal with it. When I do call Chief Cato, they are very responsive. They send officers out to try to assist, and you'll see more of them in the city now than you have historically. But it's a work in progress, and it's the challenge of us as a public safety agency with a 911 center and the ability to respond to emergency calls for service, and then a service agency like DART that doesn't have that. They get notified when somebody pushes the button on the train, calls them directly through a number that's posted on the train, or we notify them. So the numbers can get off a little bit.
Yeah, so imagine the logistical challenges, or you have someone in Mustang Station that is an issue, someone in Mustang Station, whether it's a business owner, a resident, a patron of some sort, the first thing they do is call 911. So you guys respond.
Yes, sir.
There's not a DART button in Mustang Station in the restaurant area,
Correct.
right? There is over at the train station, but at this point, the patron doesn't have any idea that the perpetrator may be connected to the DART station, right? That information's found out later. You guys are able to respond much faster because you're here. Your DART officers may be somewhere else, and they're going to have to come from maybe Carrollton, Dallas, wherever they may be at the time. So there are natural logistical challenges that I'm very aware of that that just make it better for our police to respond, but they're still an issue, right? Somehow, some way, these folks know they can come up on the train, come out, do their dirty work, get back on the train and go back home, often undetected. And so I'm wondering, is it feasible to have an officer at the station 24/7, or some schedule that makes sense, that there's a present there all the time to create a better deterrence? Or is that happening now and it's not solving the issue?
No, I would say that it's not happening right now to have somebody there 24/7, and that's really just a matter of resources and whether or not we have enough resources. And I can guarantee you that if the legislation goes through, we will certainly have fewer resources than we have today. So, I think I will speak to Chief Cato and see what resources we have. My guess is that we probably don't have enough resources to deploy 24/7 at one location, particularly as we look at the level of crime. But I will ask Chief Cato to brief me on the reconciliation of the data that Chief McCoy has. I'm very interested to see where there are discrepancies. And certainly, as I said before, relative to the rest of the system, of course, we look at where to deploy our staff based on where we have some of the highest, or what I call the hot spots. But I understand the concern, and so we will take a look at that.
Yeah, we're investing obviously a lot of money in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a new volleyball multi-sport center that's attracting a lot of families. And so it's going to get more and more congested. And so whatever we can do to get ahead would
Sure.
be great. Yep. Thank you, Chief. One other question. How many DART riders do we have, or do we even know, that use the Farmers Branch stations, bus stops?
That is something I did not bring with me, unfortunately. I should have, but I was running out. So I will get that information to you, and I will send a letter to you and Mr. Williamson so that we can follow up with that information.
Yep, very good. Ridership seems to be a difficult number to get our hands on, and it's an important number so that we can see what our tax dollars are going toward among how many riders to sort of quantify, the expense. So, okay. Very good. Thank you.
Any others?
Thank you. Councilman Neal.
Thank you, Gary and Nadine, for coming. I think most of my questions were answered by Nadine. Thank you very much. Good job. Otherwise, I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Okay, very good. You may.
In addition to the information regarding Farmers Branch ridership, could we get information for other cities as well so we can see a comparison between usage up and down the line?
Yes, absolutely. We do have ridership across the entire service area, and if you're that interested in it, we can even give it to you by stop or by station. So I know that's not what you're asking for, but we'll be happy to get you the information you want.
Yeah, city level would be fine.
Okay.
So I just want to remind council, our discussions with DART have been going on for almost close to 2 years in regards to some of the issues that have been mentioned this afternoon. One in particular, though, that caught my attention, and I just want to say, Councilman Roman, we're not discussing service level issues at this time or specific stops or anything like that. Our comments and focus have been more on policy related to the position of Farmers Branch as a city and its ability to have a voice on the dartboard, its ability to have what I would call equity in terms of what we pay into the system versus the benefit that we receive. And, you know, you've made that public in EY study and others. So if council needs to get a copy of that to become more familiar with what we're doing, which are the bigger overriding policy issues, I think we can certainly do that. Wheels are moving pretty fast at this point, okay? We have mayors that are meeting. We have legislation that is trying to work. We have DART board trying to figure out how they're going to restructure governance and whatnot. So all of these things are working at the same time. I appreciate the fact that you all are addressing or at least open to addressing many of these issues. It's not, none of this is going to be solved easily or quickly, and I realize that. But I do want to talk about a couple of things, one of which was something we were involved with yesterday, which had to do with the reapportionment of sales tax. Okay? You get your funding through sales tax. All right? I'm surprised that I didn't see anybody from DART down in Austin as Ways and Means were discussing how they're going to, or what they would like to do in terms of pushing a bill forward that would drastically affect the city of Farmers Branch in terms of what we collect in sales tax, because what we collect has a direct reflection on what you collect.
Yeah, that's right.
And if we're going to lose potentially estimated up to $5 million in sales tax, that's going to hit DART. That's going to have an effect on you, as are the amounts from any other city. And it's not just our $5 million would move to Dallas and you'll get it from them. That's not the way this is set up to work.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that y'all need to definitely put on your radar and begin lobbying towards and possibly working closer with the 13 cities. Certainly governance is something that we want to continue to have discussion with or on, and the long-term planning in terms of cities' participation in economic development as it relates to the station area and your participation with us, yes, it's a must. It is almost a prerequisite that you do participate with us. So we want to make sure that we're doing and working on that in the proper way. And I appreciate Nadine meeting with staff and getting a sense from them. Hopefully, I was able to communicate with Gary from a policy standpoint, and Councilman Reed was with me when we did that. And so I don't think we're talking out of turn on anything, but that's going to be real important. It's important to future planning for the city. It's important for long-term viability of DART remaining in Farmers Branch.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. And reinvestment, the participation in reinvestment is key. So I don't really want to get into more things because there's so many more meetings that are happening. And I just wrote 2 of them on my calendar before I came in here. But I will say to council, this will not be the last time that you see DART coming here. I think you'll be on a fairly regular rotation as we continue to move forward with the policy discussions that we're having. And then we can start having those sub-level discussions on service with council, district representatives from all over the service area. Okay. But I'm going to close with one thing, and that is DART's growth is outside the service area. I think you all know that. Mm-hmm. We have to find a way to expand the system to make a regional transportation system truly regional and work for the area. And our growth is not in milking 13 cities. It's finding a way to get Arlington, Frisco, other cities into the fold. And I hope that we will be able to be a part of those conversations.
You absolutely will, Mayor. And let me tell you, I didn't mention Transit 2.0, which the RTC is doing, and that is due to be completed in the May timeframe. But that was put in place because the cities had, just so everybody knows, the cities had requested that Michael do that, and he hired McKinsey and InfoStrategies, who have 5 or 6 elements that they were working through right now. We have them come to our board meetings frequently, and they were there last month, both InfoStrategies as well as Michael. And I think that is going to offer us some great visibility into how we may grow the system across the region. And we're 100% engaged in it. We believe it's quite important, and we're tracking that, and they're tracking us. So Michael's been at 3 of our board meetings recently just to make sure that we are consistent with our messages. Now, we'll say one of the things that our proposed, it's a proposed resolution that we're working on Friday, but we're talking about how do we handle the cities who have been donors, which Farmers Branch has been a donor city, and how do we handle that differently than donee cities? So I think that's really important in that whole discussion. We've been around a lot. We're talking to a lot of people, and we're trying to, through the RTC activity and our own, we're trying to come up with some good solutions that might satisfy the needs. So appreciate your help and your interest. And just for Councilmember Roman, you can blame me because we started these meetings with the managers and mayors just to get some focus. And then the purpose of this meeting was to come back out now and just talk about where we are. So my apologies.
Well, and I have a question for Nicole. Nicole, I have a question. The mayor made a suggestion that the question or remark that I made was not relevant to the discussion of what's on the agenda. I think Nadine, you had mentioned something about Envision. Is that correct? I just want to make sure, as I was responding to what was being said, that I was not outside of the bounds of what was legally allowed to be discussed under this agenda item.
No, you weren't. If you were, I would have let you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gary and Nadine, thank you all very much.
Thank you. All of
We
you.
appreciate it.
Appreciate you very much.
Okay.
I want to mention that Doug Herbacek, Director Herbacek, is here from Carrollton.
Yep, saw him in the back. Thank you, Doug. Next up is item C3, receive an update on the Mercer Crossing Median Transition Plan.
Mayor and Council, Robert Diaz, Parks and Rec Director. I wanted to provide a quick update on the Mercer Crossing media transition. I know Mayor Pro Tem Omar Roman was, I think it was a future agenda item that you had looked at. And the timing was really right on target because we've been working really closely with the HOA, Essex Management Company on moving forward to try to make this transition. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get the final agreement on this agenda, so that's why I wanted to go ahead and provide an update at this meeting. We are looking to have the agreement on the April 1st meeting. So, but we'll go ahead and move through, let's see, I guess so. Okay. Just to give a little recap, we started discussing the medians in Mercer Crossing back in the spring of '24, meeting with the Essex Management Company about the possible transition. It was part of the budget discussions through the summer of last year. In October, we had staffing funding that was put into the budget. And then in November, once we had funding in place, we went ahead and started those discussions with Essex to try to move forward to get that transition in legal terms. Because I don't know if y'all remember, the Oak Brook transition was a lot easier. It was basically a couple of medians. This was a little bit more involved just because of the numerous, what Victor was able to uncover in regards to the multiple iterations of the agreement to try to get it to where, when you all review it, you'll see the many names that the development was called as we kind of worked through it. And we kept those discussions through the end of the year and into February. One of the things I wanted to kind of bring forth was so in February, myself and Mark Moffitt, Park Superintendent, we toured on a couple of occasions, the Mercer median in particular. Basically, looks like a lot of the landscape along that median had not been reestablished from the many years of ice storms, droughts, whatever. And so Mark and I had really concerns about taking that median over without some protections in place to the city. We just didn't want to have it to be a negative impact to the budget. We know there was some funding of $120,000 that was discussed for some equipment, but we didn't want to immediately, after taking those over, have a lot of work to do to get everything up to snuff. So we approached Essex about, and as through talking through the agreement as well, how we could approach that and getting those medians back up to par before we took them over. So they took it upon themselves, got their landscape contractor out there, went through both Mercer and Whittington medians, and put a proposal together. And what they want to do is be able to put that included, and you'll see that when you see the agreement in April. And right now they're proposing about $168,000 worth of improvements to both medians before they would give them to us, which I think is pretty significant. In addition to that, they would also transition the water, the irrigation back over to the city, which I think we knew that was initially going to be part of their costs. But, I think it is, I was pretty impressed with that. They were able to give the scope to us, and we included that in the agreement. And you all will see when that's in April, the significant amount of improvements that they'll be making. And like I said, this is where we are. So in April, at the April 1st meeting, we will look at the final agreement. Other way. And just next steps, just to kind of bring everybody up to date. And I want to say that we have had discussions about, I know Councilman Reed had some questions about possibly having someone from the HOA Management Company here this evening. They plan on being at the April 1st meeting for sure to answer any other specific questions. I did get some of the questions back to Councilman Reed. He had some specific questions, and I can go through those this evening if you need me to. But just to bring, so they're not here this evening, but I can relay any questions that council has back to them before the April 1st meeting. But where we are, I'm briefing council at this meeting and letting you know about the agreement that will be coming on April 1st. In April, the HOA contract will begin update. Once we execute the agreement in April, the HOA contractor will then begin their updates. They, within the agreement, have 60 days to get all the updates completed as part of the agreement. You all will see that. We will then, at that point, we will take over the maintenance in regards to the mowing, trimming, the regular maintenance. That'll start. So it'll be kind of two things going at once. We'll be taking that part over, and then there'll also be some transition, the water and some of the updates to the landscape. So then continuing in April, like I said, we'll also, you'll see so once we secure with the agreement, we'll also be getting the cash payment of $120,000. And when we did the budget this year, we wanted to wait until we got that funding before we went ahead and put a request in to get that vehicle. So you'll be seeing that, I believe, at the second April meeting, you'll be seeing that request. So our time frame for having the contractor complete their work is in that May, June. If they hit it, if the agreement's executed, say, within the first couple of days after April, they have 60 days. So we're looking all of April, all of May. So end of May, early June, we should have all their items done, water transition back over. We will have done the mowing and all those things since April, and then we'll have complete control. I do know that one of the questions Councilman Reed had was on some of the HOA, and I'll just go ahead and go through these. One was, will there be a rebate from the HOA since dues were due January 1st? And there, I guess there was a $400 current. Their response to that was, once the agreement's fully executed, the work is outlined in Exhibit B, which is Exhibit B, when you all will see it, it's the outline of all the scope of work that they'll be doing, is complete, and the HOA receives city acceptance for the completed work. We will work on a budget reforecast with the intent of apportioning the rebates. So that kind of lets you know that. And then the other question was, will there be HOA dues for 2026? The response was, the obvious intent is to drastically decrease, if not eliminate, homeowner assessments. The proposed 2026 budget has not been presented or approved by the board of directors. We're unable to definitively publish an amount until the budget process, as outlined in the recorded CCRs, is follow. So I think they're basically waiting until we get everything done, and then they'll reassess. I think it was discussed last year that they would probably move toward, since this HOA was doing the median maintenance, they probably moved. I do think they're also doing and I don't know what they'll do, but they've got those entry features coming in that I think are also part of this one, but I'm not sure how that'll work. That'll be something that they'll have to work through. And then, any questions?
Councilman Roman?
No, I appreciate the presentation, and I haven't heard anything from it, and I know residents probably were very eager to figure out where we were in terms of this, because there was a big discussion and push to try and get this moved forward last year around this time, and there was some movement and presentations that happened, I think, late last year, and when the dues were due, earlier this year, people were wondering, well, I thought that had moved forward, but obviously I wanted to make sure we had a laid out presentation that can give them a timeline, and I think what you put together was suitable for what I was looking for. And then we'll just keep working with them to try and get this transitioned over, and fingers crossed that the dues will drop significantly, if not be eliminated. And you're right, there are some Dove statues, I think it's 3 or 4 of them that they maintain, but I don't anticipate that the maintenance on them is going to be too costly. So, we'll work with them as elected officials and see between Councilmember Reed and I, and see if they're amenable to eliminating the fee completely.
Great.
So, thank you for that.
No problem.
Councilman Bennett? Councilman Reed?
Yeah, I want to, just to show how awesome our staff is, I asked Ben if they could present a map of the affected medians, or the impacted medians, that has now been put into the folder. So do you think you could pull that up for me?
Sure, I know which, let's see.
I
think
hate
it's
to
in
be
the-
that guy that
it's in the
throws a
folder.
curveball
Correct.
at you, but
There you go. And our, Tara Bradley, our park planner, was able to, she did all this work behind it. She was able to specifically call out each median. There's 15 medians between the whole project that will be taken over. And she's called out each one individually, and that way, when we put this, when you all will see this as part of the agreement. And I think between this and the scope of work that they're doing, I think, and I kind of wondered that because they may have had those assessments, that might be why they have some funding to be able to put towards some updates, but they're really needed. And I appreciate them doing it, just because it would have been hard for our staff to catch up, especially on Mercer. So.
definitely, you guys have done a great job coordinating with them, so I thank them. I thank you for everything that you've done. I know the residents are appreciative of the change as they'll be moving forward, especially if it keeps a few extra dollars in people's pockets. So that's great. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you, staff, again, for the quick draw on the map. So
problem.
thank you.
Councilman Jackson.
No questions, Mayor.
Councilman Neal. Okay. I have a question, two
Yes, sir.
questions. One, when the Billingsley property gets built out along Mercer Parkway and then going north on Senlac, I'm guessing that there'll be some median there, or at least on the side?
I believe there's already some, and I'd have to probably refer to the planning department, but I believe already are some median crossings from that. You mean the Brinks, what is noted as the Brinks building, and that was going to be redeveloped?
So
I
will
believe
this-
so.
will
There are some median entrances there. That is included. The medians that are in front of that are included as part of this. You can see, if you look at the map,
Yeah.
the highlighted yellow, we go all the way to Senlac. So.
Okay, well, as the southern part of Mercer Parkway gets developed, where there's an empty space right now, do you expect the scope of work to grow?
I see what you're saying now. Yeah, so as Sinlac continues going south, and then you have Mercer going east, if we have to amend the agreement, we can. I mean, that's something we'd have to bring it back to council if that's something that we want to do.
The agreement's based on the current configuration of the property, and now, as that develops, that's going to change and obviously create more workload for our crew that's in that area.
Correct.
So, okay.
If
And
it's
then-
added, if it's added. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
And then the comment was made about eliminating part of the dues or HOA dues for maintenance, but do they not have other common areas within these neighborhoods?
Correct. There is another, if I recall from our discussions last year, there's another HOA that maintains the amenity center and other common areas. This one we're dealing with in particular just does primarily the medians.
Okay.
And I think there's, so if you go to, where the racetrack is on Valley View and Luna, Terry? Valley View, or where the big lot is, where we're trying to get a grocery store. Okay. On the corner, there's like a big statue, with little doves on it. They maintain that one, and there's another one down the road, and I think one more over by the daycare center in front
We're
of the.
not taking that stuff.
No, those will still be maintained by them, but that's what I was saying. I don't think that the expense to maintain those, and I think it might just be pressure washing maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's going to be significant, so I think the dues will be reduced significantly.
Okay.
The next big expense from when I reviewed their budget was the fee for Essex to manage the HOA.
Okay.
So there was that. And are you finished? I had another question. Okay. What are these boxes over on Whittington and Luna, and then in front of the towers? There's these boxes that I didn't know if that denoted something special. In the picture?
The west side of Wilmington, I think when Tara was putting this together, she just wanted to make sure that there is a single median right there. And we wanted to make sure, I think we were just trying to call that out.
Okay, got it. And then to be clear, where it says Brinks Home, you see that there's this thing that's happening to the road where it kind of, it peaks and it starts getting a little bit narrow. That's where the medians end, and in this image here, it shows that it will go all the way to Senlac. So from where Brinks begins, or the building end of the building at the east side begins, that's where the medians end, and everything east is just road.
Correct. And it's just trying to show that where we would maintain the landscape into that median. So, correct. I think it turns into paved stone or something.
It's just a road.
Yeah,
There's nothing in the
exactly.
middle. So I just wanted to make sure that
Correct.
this
we
didn't denote that there were going to be some medians that were going to pop up at some point, and we were going to be responsible for
Correct,
that.
and you can see she gets into very much detail, and this might
Yep.
even help a little bit. So she calls out on Mercer, there's 8 medians, and she calls all those out there, and then we've got all the detail, and
Yeah.
then Whittington.
And I appreciate you guys also spelling Whittington correctly. And years ago, it always
took me a
included,
couple times,
It
but
always
yes.
included an H for some reason. It was always WH, as in what.
And these
So
are
I
the-
appreciate the.
And these are the
spelling.
Whittington ones. So there's 7, and you're
Yeah.
correct. See, that's the last one,
Yep.
and I think it's road basically.
Yep.
Just in there, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to read us into executive session, and then I know we only have 2 items left, but since we have a short regular agenda, we'll come back and finish those 2 items in a little bit after a regular council meeting. So, the city will convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.072, real property deliberations, to discuss the sale of real property located at 2784 Valwood Parkway. I'm sorry, that was item D1. Item D2 is the city will convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072 to discuss sale of real property located at 13309 Josie Lane. So let's take 5 or 7 minutes, and then we will convene in the city manager's conference room.